Progressive Adventists are members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church who disagree with certain beliefs traditionally held by mainstream Adventism, and officially by the Church. They are often described as liberal Adventism by other Adventists. The term progressive is generally preferred as a self-description. This article describes terms such as evangelical Adventism, cultural Adventism, charismatic Adventism, and progressive Adventism and others, which are generally related but have distinctions. Progressives typically disagree with one or more of the Church's basic beliefs such as the Sabbath, or distinctive beliefs such as the investigative judgment, the remnant, a future global Sunday law, or a use of Ellen G. White's writings. They also tend to question some of the denomination's 28 fundamental beliefs, with debate arising on the nature of the Trinity, perpetuity of the law of God, the nature of Christ, the gift of prophecy, creation or observance of the seventh-day Sabbath. Quote, "It also has many similarities with the ecumenical emerging church movement which those involved in mostly agree on is the disillusionment with the organized and institutional church. Perceptions and definitions of it may differ somewhat depending on the author, although much in common is also clearly discernible. History. The divergent movement emerged from certain interactions with evangelical Christians in the 1950s, which included the publication of Questions on Doctrine in 1957. This period marked a shift in the broader Christian world's perception of Adventists, from being viewed as a sect to being more commonly accepted as a legitimate Christian denomination. The term Progressive Adventist was first used in the mid-1960s in Spectrum magazine. According to one author, one scholar wrote in 2001, "It is only within the last few decades that the Adventist Review has recognized editorially that there exists within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, at least in North America, liberals, liberal churches, liberal colleges, universities, and liberal conferences." Depending on the author and his/her agenda, Adventist liberals are compared and/or contrasted with conservative Adventists, historic Adventists, Bible-believing Adventists, traditional Adventists, evangelical Adventists, cultural Adventists, and/or ecumenical Adventists. Beliefs and practices. Progressives tend to agree on some beliefs, but differ or have greater variation on others. According to one author, Progressive Adventism regrets the anti-intellectual, authoritarian and obscure tendencies that characterize a significant segment of traditional, historic Adventism, along with the attempts at creating a creed out of the 27 fundamental doctrines. Ron Corson identifies 4 common areas of progressive belief: investigative judgment, a different view of the investigative judgment, or a denial of its biblical basis; remnant, an inclusion of other Christians in the term remnant; Ellen White, a less rigid view of the inspiration of Ellen White, from recognizing her fallibility to perhaps even denying her prophetic gift; Sabbath, an emphasis on the benefits of Sabbath but a denial that it is the seal of God, or that Sunday keeping will ever become the mark of the beast. Inclusivity. Progressives are inclusive of other types of Adventists, and believe different beliefs and types should be welcomed as part of the community. An example is Alden Thompson's 2009 book, Beyond Common Ground: Why Liberals and Conservatives Need Each Other. Sabbath. Progressive Adventists tend not to hold to the traditional view of Sabbath as a holy day of worship, but emphasize some of the positive aspects of Sabbath, such as it being made for human benefit, and deny that Sunday keeping is or ever will be the mark of the beast. Origins. Progressive Adventists tend to challenge traditional teachings such as young earth creationism, and some have accepted old earth creationism or evolutionary creationism. Clifford Goldstein and other Adventists have argued that evolution and Adventism are incompatible. Church structure. Progressive Adventists typically believe the present church structure is very top-heavy, with too many levels of leadership, and possibly too much hierarchical control. Free press. Progressive Adventists claim they believe there should be candid reporting of news and information about the church, whether positive or negative. They believe in open discussion in a free press. Music. Progressive Adventists are typically open to a variety of styles of worship music in church, including contemporary Christian music. Movie theaters. Progressives typically disregard the church's stand on movie theater attendance. For instance, the Adventist publication Spectrum regularly reviews movies. Varieties of evangelical, progressive Adventism. Cultural Adventism. A similar group have been referred to as cultural Adventists. This term may be used of those Adventists who are not overly concerned with theology, such as evangelical Kenneth Sample's description of a segment that is atheological in nature and reflects what would call a cultural Adventism. Quote, "It may also refer to those who feel an attachment towards the Adventist Church for cultural reasons only rather than beliefs or strict theological conformity." Clifford Goldstein has declared, "A cultural Adventist. The concept's incomprehensible to me. I'm an Adventist for one reason: the beliefs, the teachings, the doctrines that this church, and this church alone, espouses. If it were not for them, I'd be gone faster than the junk food at church potlucks. The Seventh-day Adventist culture had nothing to do with bringing me here. On the contrary, coming as I did from a secular Jewish background, the culture was the biggest obstacle." Charismatic Adventism. While Adventist church worship is commonly conservative, a few minor segments in the history may be looked at as charismatic in nature. Phenomena of this nature have been present throughout Adventist history, resulting in such things as the Holy Flesh movement, which Ellen White strongly rebuked. Quote, "Liberal Adventism." The term liberal Adventist or left-wing Adventist usually means progressive Adventist. This is appropriate because most progressive Adventists are still conservative or evangelical Christians. For example, most believe in the resurrection of Jesus. They do not hold to a libertine or anything goes attitude which the term liberal sometimes implies. They also do not believe in the foundational or fundamental beliefs of the Adventist Church. A small number of progressive Adventists are actually liberal Christians, accepting such things as homosexuality. According to evangelical Kenneth Samples, it should also be mentioned that, though small, there was and is a segment in Adventism which could be described as being theologically liberal, or even very liberal. He claims it rejects Christ's vicarious substitutionary atonement. Ron Corson wrote, "Could be termed liberal, except that the term liberal Christian generally refers to those who don't believe that Christ was resurrected nor that he performed miracles, and who hold other tenets with which most progressive SDAs would not agree." These liberals are often involved in the Jesus seminars. Social action. Some progressive Adventists describe themselves as liberal to mean they are liberal or left-wing politically, and have a concern for political or social action. Other terms also compare to the evangelical left, and progressive Christianity also compare to the Christian religious left. Other terms such as ecumenical Adventist and evangelical Adventist have been used, with presumably related meaning. Moves toward mainstream Christianity. The 1957 publication of Questions on Doctrine as a result of dialogue with critic Walter Martin is seen as a beginning for progressive Adventism. According to one author, the roots of evangelical Adventism can be traced to scholars who met with Martin and Barnhouse or earlier. The seeds of this movement were sown within the denomination via the book QOD in 1957, and the seed plot was watered by the public ministries of such men as R. A. Anderson, H. M. S. Richards, Sr., Edward Heppenstall, Robert Brinsmead, Desmond Ford, Smuts Van Rooyen, and others. This book precipitated the different factions. The movement emerged with Ford and Brinsmead as its main spokesman. Brinsmead changed his stance while Desmond Ford apostatized from the church's viewpoint in the 1970s, with issues with church doctrine similar to A. F. Ballinger. Many liberals left the church in this period, and liberals still follow and cite his viewpoints. According to one author, progressives reject the mainstream views on and are united by belief in the pre-fallen nature of Jesus, assurance of salvation without sanctification, that overcoming sin or perfectionism is impossible, that Jesus ascended straight to the most holy place rather the holy place in the tabernacle in heaven at his ascension, that Ellen White had the gift of prophecy but was not infallible nor should be used for doctrine. Media. Operational progressive Adventists, such as Raymond Cottrell, were responsible for the progressive-leaning Spectrum, a news magazine published by Adventist Forums, that has been the premier independent Adventist magazine since its founding in 1969. In addition to its quarterly journal, Spectrum also runs a regularly updated website with news and analysis on developments within the church and other areas. Progressive Adventists also established Adventist Today, a bi-monthly magazine first published in 1993. In 2008, Adventist Today made a renewed commitment to reporting on a greater diversity of Adventist views. Also started by progressives was Adventist Heritage, a journal of Adventist history, which provided an important liberal platform from 1974 to 1998 in roughly 18 volumes. It was supported by the Association of Seventh-day Adventist Historians and other groups. Gary Land was a founding editor, as was Ronald Numbers. Jonathan M. Butler served as editor for a decade. Published twice yearly, it was acquired by Loma Linda University. Historical. A number of progressive Adventist publications have gone out of print in the last number of years. These include Present Truth magazine, founded by Robert Brinsmead in 1972 with a grace gospel-centered focus. In 1978, Brinsmead changed its title to Verdict to reflect his move away from evangelical Christianity. The material on the Present Truth magazine website is produced by the Gospel Friends Christian Fellowship, which they explain to be an association of evangelical Seventh-day Adventists. It does not necessarily represent Brinsmead's current views. 52 issues were apparently published. The Good News Unlimited magazine is published by Desmond Ford's ministry of the same name. It began in 1981 as a bi-monthly, switched to monthly publication in mid-2003, and continues to be published as of 2008. A related magazine is Good News for Adventists. Adventist Professional was an Australian magazine published quarterly from 1989 to 1999 by the Association of Business and Professional Members. Based in Sydney, an organisation of Australia and New Zealand Adventist business and professional laypeople established in 1961. 11 volumes were published, and Trevor Lloyd is a former editor. The magazine Adventist Currents was published from 1983 to 1988 in California as a response to Ford's dismissal. 3 volumes totaling 11 issues were published, as well as several issues of a newsletter in 1990. The magazine Evangelica was published from 1980 until 1987 in 8 volumes and promoted the cause of evangelical Adventism. It was started in reaction to Desmond Ford's dismissal from the ministry. Conferences. Some claim that numerous Adventist conferences and meetings have a progressive flavor. Possibly see also the International Conference on Innovation. Adventist Society for Religious Studies. The Adventist Society for Religious Studies is the more progressive of the two main Adventist theological societies. The ASRS meets annually as a part of the Society of Biblical Literature meetings. Adventist Forums Conference. Adventist Forums hosts an annual conference. Adventist forum groups meet regularly around the world. Adventist Today Conference. The first camp meeting was held in 1998 in Riverside. Adventist Today hosted meetings in Monterey, California in December 2005, which featured Desmond Ford as speaker. Spiritual Renaissance Retreat. The Spiritual Renaissance Retreat is an annual event hosted by John and Joan Hewson of Pacific Union College Church, and co-sponsored by Adventist Forums and Adventist Today. Held in Monterey, California, it is based partly on a yearly retreat concept popularized by Bill Clinton. Desmond Ford was invited as a speaker, but after complaints to church leadership, this invitation was withdrawn. Relations with others. Relations with other Christians. Progressive Adventists claim that they display an open and inclusive attitude towards other Christians and other beliefs and doctrines that differ from the Adventist Church. Other Christians such as Tony Campolo has had positive experiences speaking on numerous Adventist university campuses. Clark Pinnock gave very favorable reviews of Alden Thompson's Inspiration, despite the significant attention given to Ellen White in the content, and Richard Rice's theology textbook Reign of God. Pinnock was also impressed by Richard Rice's book The Openness of God, and later was the editor for another work of the same name, contributed by authors Rice, John E. Sanders and others. The Evangelical Christian Research Institute has offered a hand of fellowship and encouragement to what they describe as evangelical Adventism. Progressive Adventists claim they are supportive or appreciate those statements by Ellen White which affirm other Christians, such as the instruction to come near to ministers of other denominations, to pray with and for them. Some authors report increased mixing of progressive Adventists joining with other Christians worshiping on Sunday rather than the Sabbath. For instance, in North America, it's not uncommon to find a member in church on Sabbath morning who, on another day, joins a study group of a different denomination and no denomination. Criticism. Clifford Goldstein has criticized cultural Adventists and the Adventist left, as described above. He had a blog on the Adventist Today website for nearly 1 year. See particularly the blogs, Will the Real Thinking Adventist Please Stand Up? Part 1 and Part 2. He applies an Ellen White quote to liberal Adventists: "We have far more to fear from within than from without." Samuel Karan Teng Pipim displays a strong concern about liberal Adventist scholars. By Alden Thompson's count, the footnotes label some 66 Adventist scholars, authors, administrators as being on the wrong side of the divide. Former General Conference President Robert S. Falkenberg wrote, "Will the real evangelical Adventist please stand up?" An article in Proclamation, a magazine produced by former Adventists critical of Adventism, criticizes progressive Adventism in particular, claiming that evangelicalism and Adventism are incompatible. The authors of Seeking a Sanctuary have argued that a common theology keeps Adventists together. They claim religions usually remain unified by ethnicity, but this doesn't hold for Adventism, which is very culturally diverse. Former Adventist J. Mark Martin gave talks entitled An Evangelical Adventist, Andy Nash, and counted some within the Adventist Today and Spectrum groups who had a liberal view of Scripture. Some rejected the Bible's position on homosexuality, or believed Adam and Eve or Daniel were not real people. He commented, "Do you see the irony here? At times, this movement has struggled to make room for those who took a higher view of Scripture, who grappled with the biblical text but arrived at different conclusions. Yet today we have thought leaders willing to set aside major teachings of Scripture altogether." Quote, he argues for an atmosphere of tolerance of different perspectives, as long as there is respect for the authority of the Bible. One book claims qualities of liberal, break-off congregations as having the following. 1. Call your congregation something besides Seventh-day Adventist. 2. Mute and muffle distinctive Adventist doctrines. 3. And don't call the SDA Church the remnant. 4. Downplay our well-defined and long-held standards. 5. Keep the tithes and offerings in your own congregation. 6. Reduce Ellen White's role merely to a wise old woman. 7. Resist any authority from the conference level or higher. University controversies. Progressive Adventists claim they believe in academic freedom for church theologians and scientists, and claim that church administrators are generally more conservative, which has led to differences of opinion with the more liberal academics. The Spectrum editors have said every 10 years or so another witch hunt occurs in Adventist higher education. Adventist historian Michael W. Campbell observes that Adventist history teachers and the use of historical method became especially suspect as Adventism became more fundamentalist during the 1920s, during which time its history teachers were on the front line of those who were pushed out of the church. According to Terry Ahmad, one of the first major purges was at Walla Walla College in 1938. Raymond Cottrell, who some see as a progressive Adventist, as he disagreed with certain traditional positions of the church, including the investigative judgment, claims that for the first 100 years in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, scholars did not control the church's theology, and sees the 1930s and perhaps earlier as a time church administrators effectively controlled theology, and the 1950s as a time of openness. F.D. Nichols stated that the Seventh-day Adventist Bible commentary would not have been possible without the theologically open climate in the church. During the 1950s and 60s, in the early 1980s, the presidents of Southern Missionary College and Pacific Union College were given leave of absence after criticisms. The 1980 Adventist Review article, "College is in Trouble," by editor Kenneth Wood, was seen by some as a contributing factor. Employees were fired at Southern. Jerry A. Gladson, a lecturer, was dismissed by the church. A few scholars went against proposals to introduce centralized oversight of theological education, such as former General Conference President Robert Falkenberg's Total Commitment to God initiative in 1996, and Falkenberg's action to establish an overseeing board of ministerial and theological education in every division of the church to oversee its theological seminaries, evoked significant criticism in some areas, including North America, which was put on hold. There was concern over the document International Coordination and Supervision of Seventh-day Adventist Ministerial and Theological Education. See also 2003 Conference on Religious and Theological Education, Adventist Today article. Alden Thompson and John Brunt at what is now Walla Walla University continued to promote the virtues of reason, prompting an official investigation of the educational institution. Progressive Adventists have been involved in or have even begun controversies over origins of creation, evolution, Since 2009, Adventist members criticized La Sierra University because some lecturers have allegedly affirmed biological evolution, which met with criticism from Pastor David Asherick and others, such as on the website Educate Truth, founded by graduate Shane Hill. As of 2009, church and university leaders had declined to discipline those involved. General Conference President Jan Paulson made an appeal for the affirmation of the traditional Adventist belief supporting creation, but also gave support of the work of Adventist lecturers. The Board of Trustees of the university affirmed creationism. The debate was reported in the Adventist Review in 2010. The immediate past president affirmed LSU continues to be a sound, loyal Seventh-day Adventist institution where victories for Christ happen every day. The local conference president affirmed both recent six-day creation and strongly affirmed the university. See the 1987 official church statement, a statement on theological and academic freedom and accountability.